Hello, I'm your host and executive abundance coach, ShawnQ, and welcome to the School of Abundance. Have you ever left a coaching call feeling rushed, anxious, or even worried you didn't provide enough value? Or maybe you've even had a high achieving client where they felt like they needed to add so many more tasks to their to-dos, but you know that what they really need is just stillness. Well, in today's episode, I'm interviewing Jaymi Jai, a coach who calls herself a way shower and guide, who will be uncovering for us the ancient art of presence, as well as how to craft spaces for your clients where they can be truly seen and heard. But before we do that, we're going to be exploring the law of identity and how you can leverage this power to create lasting breakthroughs in your next coaching call. A special thank you to our sponsor for today's episode, the One Client Away Challenge. Now, the One Client Away Challenge is designed to help you fill your group coaching calls easy and naturally, without all the sleaze and ick of sales. If you are interested in this free sales training, it's 5 days. All you have to do is go to clientschallenge.com and you'll be able to get signed up for free. Now let's go ahead and do a quick check-in. If you're live with us, go to #Team Live. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. If you're on the rerun, go to #Team Rerun. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And let's do a quick check-in. Let's take a deep breath in. And a deep breath out. One more time. Let's take a deep breath in. And a deep breath out. How are you feeling? I know today I'm feeling really excited because I think we're going to have a really great interview with Jay. And I'm feeling really grateful. Last night, me and my family, we were playing a game called We're Not Really Strangers. It's this card game where there are questions and everybody gets to ask these questions and then everyone has to answer it. And there are 3 rounds, and each round of this game, we get deeper and deeper questions that we get to ask. So we pull a card and it starts off kind of shallow. You know, what do you think my favorite movie is? Or why do you think I do the work that I do? And then it gets deeper and deeper. So one of the questions was, what part of yourself do you see in me? Or what have you learned from some of our interactions together? And it was really cool as I was asking this question to hear my family tell me, you know, Shawn, what I see in you is leadership, is initiative. What I see in you is kindness, is love and inclusive love. So it's a love that lasts to and is spread to everyone around you. And I remember having this conversation at the end of the night with my wife about the answers that we were given and the answers we were receiving. And we really began to identify something called the law of identity. If you're taking notes, go ahead and write that down in the chat. Law of identity. The law of identity is essentially, let me break it down this way. Have you ever heard of the law of attraction? There are some different types of definitions when it comes to the law of attraction. I get this question asked a lot. Shawn, do you believe in the law of attraction? You believe in abundance. You help people live in abundance. Do you leverage or use the law of attraction to create abundance? I want to kind of break down what this means, because this is essentially my answer when I get asked that. You know, Shawn, do you believe in the law of attraction? I always ask, well, what do you mean? Because there's so many different definitions. How I define law of attraction is really through the law of identity. And we know this from a psychological perspective. If you know who Brené Brown is, she has identified a couple of different truths. Number one, that we are feeling creatures who occasionally think, not thinking creatures who occasionally feel. And our feelings oftentimes shape our identity, and our identity oftentimes shape our feelings. They're a collaborative part of who we are. Let me give you an example. If you believe you're a winner, that you're an achiever, that you're an extraordinary coach, well, what's going to happen is you will begin to enter spaces and look at the world through that lens. Now, if instead you believed you were a cheater or a thief, well, guess what? You would enter spaces looking through that lens. You would find things or opportunities to steal or cheat. Or if you're the winner, you'd find opportunities to win, to achieve. And so the law of attraction and the law of identity, to me and to many of our clients, is a matter of shifting who you believe you are. Because when you shift who you believe you are, the opportunity in front of you begins to shift. The abundance that you have access to begins to shift. If you begin to shift your identity, you will then begin to not just attract, but find and identify different opportunities. Me and my family, actually, at the end of today's episode, later today, we're going to be doing a 2023, an annual planning session. And most people, when they do their annual planning sessions, they create a lot of to-do lists. They create, okay, I want to do this in January, I want to do that, I want to travel here, I want to do this, I want to do that. And what we start off with is, instead of a to-do list, we start off with a to-be list and a to-feel list. Who do you want to be when you show up in the world next year? How do you want to feel when you show up in the world next year? Because the truth is, who you are will directly impact what you do. How you feel will directly impact what you do. So instead of starting with a to-do list, leverage the power of identity and ask yourself, who do I want to be next year? Because the behavior will follow the identity. Catch that. Put that in the chat. That was super key. Take notes. Your behavior will follow your identity. That's what the law of attraction is. The behaviors, the opportunities that you attract in your life are directly related to how you identify in your life. When you're working with your clients and they find themselves taking action or behaving in certain ways that are unwanted, they don't want to take this action, they don't want to be doing this, and they're working with you to help them resolve this problem. Or maybe they're not doing something. They want to be doing something, but for some reason there's resistance, or there's a wall, or there's a blockage. I want you to begin to ask them questions. And what if we stopped focusing on what you're doing, and what if instead we explored who you believe you are? What other people have told you about yourself? The things you have grabbed onto and held onto based off what other people have told you about yourself. So often, society, family, culture tells us who we are, and we just accept it. What if you took your clients and you said, hey, let's take all the to-dos off our table. Let's not even focus on your behaviors or your actions or the things you have to get done. And instead, let's focus on who you are today and who you are tomorrow. Imagine the breakthroughs and insights that would be created in your clients' lives. Was that good or what? Let me know in the chat if that was super good. It's a great segue because our interviewee today, Jaymi Jai, is an incredible coach who focuses on presence, who focuses on being in nature and within yourself and being fully aware. If you would, give a huge round of applause to our guest, Jaymi Jai. Hey Jaymi, how are ya?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I am so excited that you are on the show, and I want to jump right in because I have a couple of questions for you. So,
Yeah.
you were a teacher for a while in the classroom, and I've heard you describe your time in the classroom not so much in terms of structure or curriculum, but focus more on acknowledging what was needed in the moment for your students. What did that look like, and can you kind of describe the impact that had on the students?
Absolutely. I think a lot of times when we come into an environment where we're coaching, we're leading, we're teaching, we come with an agenda. And in my case, it was a curriculum that wasn't created by me. And the students didn't really have any influence or any say in what it was they were going to be learning. And so they weren't invested in it, right? And so being in the moment with students was really about finding that key that would connect them, like so that they could invest in what it was they were being asked to learn, and to really personalize it for them so it became meaningful. Because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, we're not guaranteed our next moment. And so we have to make this moment count. And so here I am in a classroom, and I've got all of these amazing teenagers in front of me. They've got all this creativity, all this beauty, all this passion, all this fire. I want to be in the moment with them in that energy, because it is life. Like it gives me life. It
Hmm.
inspires me. And I could sit there and I can hand out a work booklet, and we can sit there and we can struggle through it. Or we can be present in the moment and we can ask ourselves how that can serve us versus how we will serve it.
Hmm. So you mentioned something. Oftentimes we bring an agenda to the table. As coaches, we bring an agenda. As teachers,
Yeah.
we bring an agenda. I would even say we bring an agenda to our family. We have this idea or these expectations that we bring to all of these relationships.
Yeah.
And then you said, what if instead we could be present with the passion and the fire and the life that's already there? It's just untapped. How
Absolutely.
do we make that shift from I have this agenda or I have these expectations to I just want to be present with what's already here?
I feel that that's really about like our heart space, right?
Hmm.
Are we an open hearted curiosity to what this moment offers me versus how would I phrase this? Like, what, not what do I bring to this moment, but what does this moment bring to me?
Hmm.
And instead of being in kind of like that like higher position, right, that power over like authority where I am in control, instead I'm surrendered to the moment in acceptance of whatever that moment brings to me, and how I can actually evolve and grow through that moment.
Can you give me like a practical tactical on that? Like how does that look? Because it sounds so peaceful and so
It
joyful.
is.
What does it look like? Does it? Yeah.
So I think to reach this place, we have a lot of kind of like deconstructing to do, like when you were speaking about the law of identity, right? We have
Hmm.
all of these ideas about who we are, and really what the goal is to come into who we are, right? Deep surrendered
Hmm.
acceptance of who we were born to be, right? And that takes time, and we have to really be patient with how we move into that place of presence. And so when we're sitting in the moment and we're with people, is to just recognize the beauty of the moment and to be captivated by the beauty, right?
Hmm.
And to understand that beauty, it it's what feeds your soul. It's medicine for the soul. And if you can receive the beauty of each moment, each person, each experience as medicine to feed you,
Hmm.
you're now in that place of gratitude. You're recognizing the abundance that is present in every single moment. And
Hmm.
you are grateful for what is right there in front of you and how it can feed you, how it can sustain you. And
Hmm.
through that position of being grateful and being open and being curious, that's peace.
Hmm. So leading with curiosity and really deconstructing, you said who we've been and who we are. How would we how do we start that deconstruction? Because I can imagine that's very scary for some
Yes.
people and really uncomfortable for some people,
Yeah.
especially people who have grown up believing the same thing, thinking the same thing, identifying as the same thing, to now deconstruct that or to kind of throw that to the side and restart. That's super nerve wracking. How do you make that? How do you begin that process?
I think the beginning is where you are. So
Hmm.
when as a coach or a teacher, somebody or even yourself, is really being in your body and asking yourself, how do I feel in this moment? And to accept that feeling, right? Like
Hmm.
right now, my goal, my task for this moment is to be who I am. Not who
Hmm.
I think I am, not who I was conditioned to be, but who I am. And I have to meet myself maybe for the first time ever. And that's a really daunting task, right?
Hmm.
And to do that, I now have to go through like these walls of fire, so to speak, so that I can burn and shed these layers. And
Hmm.
if you think about the whole thing all at once, it's so overwhelming. What like it, what you just get stuck and you stop,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, slow down, just slow down. What is the next right step?
Hmm.
And the next right step, you can only know that by knowing where you are. And so it's
Hmm.
really about creating and cultivating a practice within yourself. It could be as simple as breath. And I teach this to my daughter all the time, right? Your breath is the one thing that you have with you all the time to regulate yourself.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's
Okay,
the,
wait a minute, wait a minute. Because that's
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
breakthrough. Your
Mhm.
breath is something you always have with you
Yeah.
as a tool to regulate yourself. Okay,
Yes.
dive deeper.
Okay. So I feel, right, uncomfortable. I've got this feeling in my chest and it's uncomfortable and I don't know how to deal with it because we honestly we're conditioned to bypass our discomfort.
Hmm.
But what if
Hmm. Wait a
instead,
minute, wait a minute. Okay,
yeah,
because I think you just threw a bomb in there.
yeah,
We've been conditioned
yeah.
to toss that aside. Say that again and dive deeper into that
Okay.
conditioning.
We have been conditioned, right? Like we have this idea that life should be easy just because it should just be easy.
Hmm.
But that's not life. That's just one aspect of life is ease. There's a
Hmm.
whole nother spectrum of life, and that's where we're afraid. And it's in our fear that we don't want to feel afraid. And so we have this idea that we can control our environment to bypass our fear and go into comfort. But it's in the bypassing of our fear that we actually lose out on the rich opportunity of understanding ourselves deeply, our strength, our
Hmm.
power, right? Our resilience, our resolve, our passion, right?
Hmm.
Our ability to survive, to be in the moment and not have the moment rush over us. It's like, I love this example of the otter,
Hmm.
right? And when you watch otters in like the ocean, I was sitting in this little sea cave and there was a big storm and the sea was really choppy. And there's like the birds are nowhere to be found. I'm like huddled into my little cave, but the otters are out in the storm and they are squealing in delight because
Hmm.
they're playing in those waves and they're having so much fun in the turmoil because they're
Hmm.
surrendered to the currents and the flow of energy around them and they're in it. And what if we could be like that in life? Sends to us. We just meet it with that joy, with that gratitude, and with that experience.
Wow. Okay, wait a minute, because I think you just shared such a deep gold insight, which is ease is
Mhm.
just one element of life,
Yeah.
and fear, which is something we've been conditioned to bypass. To say, I
Mhm.
feel afraid, but I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to go find comfort somewhere.
Yeah.
That fear or that turmoil or that conflict is the space
Mhm.
that if we slow down
Mhm.
and if we're still in that space, we can discover a strength and a
Yeah.
resilience and a bravery that we didn't
Yeah.
know existed within us. So how do we slow our clients down and ourselves down enough to allow them the space to
Mhm.
explore that and to discover that?
I think the first step is to be aware, right? Like, are you aware of your own body and how it's feeling? And can you be in that awareness, so deeply in that awareness that you can also acknowledge that your client is in that place as well?
Hmm.
And if you're married to your agenda, you might miss that moment. You might
Hmm.
miss that vibe and that feeling because you're so focused on getting A, B, C, D accomplished, right?
Hmm.
It goes back to your law of identity and being with the feeling, right? Rather than your to-do list,
Hmm.
right? So if I'm in my feeling and I know that this is a moment, I need to just honestly slow down in that moment with my client and say, you know what? There's something here that we need to work with.
Hmm.
Can you sit with me in this moment? And this is where your presence is so powerful. Because this is co regulation, if you can be present in that feeling within yourself and you can craft the space, the container, almost like a warm hug for your client
Hmm.
to model, right? Just slowing it all down and breathing and being comfortable in that moment. We can get to the to-do list after, but right now in this moment, we need to be present with our feeling. And we
Hmm.
bring ourselves out of our mind and the stories of our mind, and we need to come back into our bodies. We need to feel safe
Hmm.
here before we can come back here and begin understanding the stories we tell ourselves so we can start rewriting them.
Hmm. You know what's really interesting is, uh, every time I get into like a Zoom call or a conversation with you, naturally I slow down. My speaking cadence, my presence, my awareness, it all slows down. Is that something you naturally do, or is that a skill that you've developed? Like, do you intentionally create that space for your clients?
That's a really good question. I think the answer is yes and no. So, yes, it comes naturally to me. I've always been a person. I can sit on a park bench, and I think it is that presence and the vibe that I give off. A perfect stranger, complete stranger, sits down beside me, and I'm gifted with their life story. And they're
Hmm.
not always the easy stories. They're generally the stories that they're holding because they don't know who will be a comfortable and safe space to give those stories to.
Hmm.
And generally they'll it's verbal diarrhea. It just comes out of their mouth and then they get up and they go. And I never see them
Hmm.
again. But I'm gifted with that story. And I think having been like that most of my life, I've really come to appreciate the value of just being a very calm space for people. And I've
Hmm.
worked with, when I was working in the school system, you're working with kids from all different experiences. And when I've also worked with special needs children. And when you're working with individuals whose nervous systems are just dysregulated or they're just dealing like, I mean, come on, being a teenager is not always an easy time in our life. And they come in and they've got all this stuff going on. And it's like, we do have something that we need to do, but I know that you're not going to be able to do that until you're calm.
Hmm. Is
So,
this so
yeah.
in your bio, in your Instagram bio, you say, "Come home to your heart." Is that what you mean by it? Like coming home to that space where you feel safe and seen
Mm,
and heard?
yeah. So I think the way I like to envision it is that each of us inside of us, we have a sanctuary, right? And like we're always selling retreats and talking about going away for a retreat. What
Hmm.
if you could cultivate within yourself a sanctuary that you can retreat to anytime?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you're in your moments and you're exhausted and you're stressed out, you're overwhelmed, right? And instead of waiting for some future opportunity to go off to a retreat, what if you knew in this moment the best thing that you can do to serve yourself or to serve those around you is to just like take time out. And I'm going to go
Hmm.
and I'm going to quietly breathe, really focus on this area of my body and really come into this space. And you can envision and start to craft your retreat. Mine is really dark. It's like a cave. And in the center
Hmm.
of that cave, there's a fire. And I always walk towards the fire and the warmth of that fire. And that immediately starts to warm me up. It
Hmm.
starts to like make me feel calm and comfortable. And I just sit in front of that fire and I breathe. And I like that it's dark because the only thing I'm focused on is myself and the fire and the comfort that it offers.
Hmm. It reminds me of the space I tend to go to when I'm feeling worried or anxious, or even when I can't sleep. I'm laying in the bed and I just, for some reason, my eyes are popped out. We have a newborn, so I've been awake all night, most nights. Uh, and when I'm trying to get to sleep, I'll go
Yeah.
to the space that I feel the most warm and the
Yeah.
most um, almost childlike and the
Yes.
most adventurous. And it's my aunt's house, who she passed away a couple of years ago, but growing up, that was always a place that I knew was going to be so fun and so, I mean, she had a cabinet that was just a snack cabinet. And as a
Mhm.
kid, like, you could go in there and get Nutter Butters and Oreos and like gummies, and like, it was just the best thing ever. And every drawer, it seemed like there was a toy in every drawer. And I just remember being cuddled up. She had the big screen TV back when big screen TVs were like barely entering the market. and she had this massive 50-year-old turtle that lived in her backyard. And it was just, she had these stairs that were spiral stairs. And when I'm in a space that is anxious or stressed, or I'm just trying to get to sleep, I'll close my eyes, I'll slow down, I'll breathe, and I'll just picture myself being in that space and playing like a kid. And it regulates my body and my emotions. And there's a scientific, a psychological article I read, research article that talked about how we are immersed. The psychology is as a study, as a practice, is entering this new space where it's identifying that the brain isn't separate from the body, but it is the body. That your body is part of your brain through your spine, through your just the different nerve endings that go from your brainstem into your body, and the things that you're feeling in your body impact the way you think and the way you feel. And so tell me a little bit about how we can, let's say we're in a coaching session with a client and we notice there's anxiety, there's stress, there's something they're feeling that they've been conditioned to dismiss that we see. How do we gently create that space? And what are some of the questions we can explore with them that will allow them to tap into that hidden power of resolve and resilience that you mentioned earlier?
Okay, so I actually want to reference back to the story you shared about where you go, right? You went back to a place as a child. And I think that that's where we begin, right? Is we're going to spend some time here really getting to know your inner child and to come up with that space, right? That place that was where you felt free and at peace and yourself. And for you, I love like the way you described it is exactly how I understand your personality. There's toys, playful, and it was really excited and it was really like high energy, but it was delicious, right? My space, I'm alone and I'm out in nature, right? I'm about 2 years old and I'm watching the auras dance across the grass and I'm watching the wild horses run in the field. And I'm just like, wow, like I feel bigger than two. I feel completely expanded and in oneness with all around me. And so I think that within our kind of core memory, right, those places that we go to where we feel really safe and really free, through there we begin to identify parts of who we are. Right? And it's like by just coming into that place, the body naturally starts to calm down. Right? Because a child, when they're in those places, they're not judging themselves. They're fully immersed in the moment. They are not thinking about who they are. They are not focused on believing who they are. All they are is who they are in that. And if we can come back to that core memory, we now have an inner reserve and example to come back to every time we come out of that place that we were actually there once. And we can actually bring this into our life more.
And so I wonder, is there what's coming up for me intuitively is this exercise we could probably do with our clients where it's identifying where's that safe space? Where do you feel most childlike? What's that memory where you feel most full and most expanded? And have them almost, I'm thinking like to tap into that childlike wonder, like have them draw it out and like use crayons and like, hey, we're going to create this space that you can always go back to and create that. I think you called it like this inner sanctum, this inner sanctuary that you can always return to, that's yours and only yours, that allows you to regulate, allows you to expand, allows you to be and identify who you really are. Because as I think what's really cool about what you said is like that's how you see my raw personality, or like the core of my personality. And when I imagine myself there, I see myself fully authentic, fully congruent, fully myself, fully free. And so what if you could create this space, and what if you created this space with your clients that they could always return to? That's
Absolutely.
incredible.
Can I add something there really quickly?
Yeah.
I think sometimes we're going to have clients where it's going to maybe potentially, given their life circumstances, be difficult for them to maybe come up with
Mm,
that safe space. They might not be able to access that. And so what we can do with them in that moment is we can be playful, and we can say,
mm,
okay, you know what? I like acceptance of who they are and where they are in that moment. It's not pushing them. I know you have this place inside of you, right? It's not about that. It's okay. Together, can we play and can we create that space? What does it
mm,
look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it, taste like? Can we get into your senses and really together collaborate in this very calm, very safe space on
mm,
what that would look like for you?
mm,
And to take it even a step further and say, okay, like your homework, no, I don't love to assign homework, but I think it is applicable sometimes, is I want you, right? Or I'm offering you an opportunity here to actually visually create that space.
mm,
So that if you're struggling, right, because you're not identified with that core memory, that core feeling that's going to bring that visual up for you, what you
mm,
can do is you can put it in a place, right? You can keep it with you. And like you're on a train and you start to have an anxiety attack, you can pull
mm,
that out, or pull it up on your phone if you created it on Canva or something, or Pinterest board. And you can focus on those images and breathe,
mm.
because that's the safe space you've created for yourself.
Hmm. You know what's really interesting that comes up for me as well is that Dino Delpletion, our most one of our episodes, he said the brain processes and the body stores. And
Yeah.
now that I'm thinking about what you're sharing, the space in my body where I store that memory is in my fingers. And so I'll
Mm,
start tapping my fingers when I want to enter that space because it anchors that memory in my body or stores that memory in my body. So I wonder, is that something we could also do with our clients of, okay, now that we've created this space, where do you want to anchor it in your body so it's easy
yeah.
for you to tap into it or access it?
Absolutely. I think
Hmm.
that's it, and like the tapping that you said, because for me, I usually tap my heart.
Hmm.
That's my body spot. The other thing people notice is I often rub my third eye and I don't even know that I'm doing it.
Hmm.
And it was pointed out to me recently by a few people, and I appreciated that because I was unconscious of that area of my body that I
Hmm.
often tap into. And I
Interesting.
think that is wise. And to, take it that step further and ask them they will get into the habit,
Hmm.
right, of remembering. I'm aware that I'm dysregulated,
Yeah.
right? And then taking the action that comes after the awareness, right? I'm aware of the feeling, and now I need to put something in action to bring myself back into alignment, into a
Hmm.
regulated space.
Yeah. So on your website, you wrote, when we partner together, the goal is not achievement, it's fulfillment. What do you mean by that?
Mm. I think the only question we need to ask ourselves is, how do we want to feel when we die?
Hmm.
And I think that ultimately that is our biggest fear, is that all of us, each and every single one of us, we will die.
Hmm.
And life is so heartbreakingly beautiful. Why do we want to leave it?
Hmm.
Right? Or we know that life can be that, and we don't know how to access it. And so I personally know I don't want to die with regret that I never actually lived. I don't want
Hmm.
to live my life to die. I actually want to die every day so that I can live fully.
Wow.
And to do that, it shifts everything in terms of how you show up to every moment, because the only guarantee I have is that I'm breathing in this moment. I cannot guarantee that the next moment I'll still be breathing. So how
Hmm.
do I make this moment count so that if this moment is my last moment, I die without that icky feeling? I die at peace.
Hmm.
And so that is a fulfilling life, is knowing that you could take your last breath and you can be at peace with the
Hmm.
life you had.
Hmm. I think that's such a great question to ask our clients as well as,
Yeah.
can we play a little? What if this were the end of your life and the next breath you take is the last?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the life you've lived? Not what did you do or are you happy with the things you've done, but how do you feel about the life you lived?
Yeah. I used
Hmm.
to do this exercise with teenagers quite often, and it was such a powerful day. Like I would always leave the classroom that day just feeling there was no actual word to describe the feeling of collaborating and I love the word philosophizing and
Yeah.
just a space of that kind of existential inquiry, right? And that existential like musing with
Hmm.
children, right? And
Hmm.
to hold space
Which let
for,
me say this because
yeah, yeah,
you said with children.
yeah,
Some people would say, well, children are too young to experience that kind of emotion or that kind of thought.
yeah.
Um, but you did it in the classroom.
Mhm.
Did the students jump in to this
Oh, yeah,
activity? Tell us
yeah.
more about that. Yeah.
I think people oftentimes we make a lot of assumptions about what kids can and can't handle. And here's the thing, a child can die, and a child is very aware of the fact that death is a possibility.
Hmm.
And oftentimes, we don't want to have that conversation with children because we ourselves are afraid, and we probably don't know
Hmm.
how to hold space for the actual reality of what life is.
Hmm.
I personally, with my own children, I teach them, and I've taught them ever since that they were young enough to understand death, to live in each moment.
Hmm.
Because I want my kids to grow up living present in each moment.
Hmm.
Because that means that every single moment counts. Every single moment is a fulfilling moment.
Hmm.
They see the abundance around them. They have gratitude for that moment because they're aware that life is fragile. Life is beautiful. Life is not forever.
Hmm.
And so you have to make the most of the time that you're given. And a lot, like I was a kid who had massive anxiety about death, right? Like I was very comfortable with it, but I think often what gave me anxiety is that nobody would talk to me about it,
Hmm.
right? I didn't have the words to understand. I didn't have the space to be held in trying to understand the fact that this feeling I have inside of me that is eternal is actually like this body is not. And how do I
Hmm.
reconcile the tension between that? I was always an existential thinker,
Yeah.
right? And so going into that darker place is once again being okay with the fact that life is so much bigger than just our joy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Life is so much bigger than just, our ease. It is also discomfort. It is
Hmm.
also sadness, right? And kids, they want to know how to be with those emotions.
Hmm.
And working with teenage, yeah, go ahead.
And if kids don't get it, adults also want to know how to feel
Right?
that. Like how many adults do we know that don't know how to regulate those emotions or don't know how to process big concepts of life like death or
Yeah,
dread or grief or sorrow. What if we created spaces
yeah,
that allowed them to talk about the things no one talks about?
absolutely.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when you look at, um, you know, you look at indigenous society, death is not something that's hidden,
Hmm.
right?
Tell us
It's a
more.
it's a part of life. I think about, okay, I'll speak personally here. Like when I went to my grandmother's funeral in Jamaica,
Hmm.
it was a very different um, celebration of death
Hmm.
than what I experienced here when when my grandmother died here.
Hmm.
One was very cold. I'm going to use that word. It was very like, this is the to-do list. These are the things that we check off.
Hmm.
There wasn't any singing. There wasn't the open casket. There wasn't people and children able to see that body and to sit in celebration of that life and all that life shared with the world. And I think that that is part of teaching children about death,
Hmm.
right? This person that has left this body,
Hmm.
how are they still here?
Hmm.
How did their love touch you?
Hmm.
How did their love change the world?
Hmm.
And how does that inspire you to live through your love?
Hmm. I know a client or a coach who takes their clients on this journey of identifying all the people they've lost in their life
Yep.
and identifying all the lessons they've learned and all the love they received from that person that still exists. And
Yeah.
the impact and the peace and the freedom that provides their clients is
Mhm.
so powerful because
Yeah.
we don't talk about death very often or grief. And it reminds me, I recently watched a movie which has become my favorite movie,
Yeah.
a superhero movie at least, is Wakanda Forever.
Okay.
And in it, it's a celebration of Chadwick Boseman, who
Yeah.
recently passed a couple of years ago. And the funeral scene is this glorious dance and this incredible, like, everyone's wearing white, everyone's happy and celebrating the life he lived, and of course there's grief,
Yeah.
and the way it's processed is by celebrating everybody who
Absolutely.
celebrating the person who had left. And so what an incredible opportunity for us to tap into the love that still lingers and lives on,
Yeah.
and the impact that has in our lives today. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. You said I've heard you say that you bridge the practical with the mystical. And we're
Yes.
kind of speaking about, like, okay, things aren't forever, but there are things that are eternal, and you kind of mentioned that in a little bit. Is that kind of what you're touching on, or what do you mean by that?
Okay. I think we can get lost in devotion to certainty,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I personally feel that the only certainty is death.
Hmm.
Everything else is fluid and it's adaptable and it's going to evolve. Like if we even look at science, which I find science absolutely fascinating. And
Yep.
one of the things I love the most about it is going back and reading textbooks from like 100 years ago on a
Hmm.
concept, right? And comparing that to how that particular idea and that theory and that certainty has actually evolved to become something else. You know,
Hmm.
we look at the drought that the world has been experiencing and all of these lost civilizations or dinosaurs or things that have been on Earth, and it's completely shifting the way that we understood how the world began or how societies like developed.
Hmm.
And we're always unearthing new answers. And so for me, I like to live outside of the certainty because I'm in the magic of life,
Hmm.
right? The mystery of life, which I think can be a very uncomfortable place for people, but that's where I like to play,
Hmm.
right? This is possibility. This is where my eyes become open to even more deeper and subtle layers of abundance,
Hmm.
right? So, like, just going with grief for a second, sometimes we can look at grief as like a scarcity, right? Like, I've lost something and I don't have something. What if instead we shifted our perspective of grief to actually being abundance, where it shows us the abundance of love that we
Hmm.
had in our lives and that we now have within us?
Hmm. That we can then place in our inner sanctuary.
Yes.
Wow.
Right. And so that's like the bridge between the practical and the mystical. I hold so much reverence for, like all of these theories and this idea of certainty. But that mystical aspect is, I also want to be able to live outside of that a little bit so that I'm always open to possibility.
Hmm. Hmm. And isn't that the beauty of what we do as coaches? Is to
Yes.
create possibility, create spaces where people can say, hey, I thought one way, and
Yes.
now I'm thinking a different way.
Yes.
Hmm. So
And
beautiful.
that's not just like, like, it's not just possible, it is life,
Hmm.
right? You can always rewrite your story.
Hmm. Okay,
There's
catch that. If you're listening to this, you can always rewrite your story. You can
Mhm.
always rewrite your story.
Yeah.
Hmm. So amazing. Jay, I'm going to give you a final word before we go into our speed round.
Yep.
Anything else you want to share with our audience about creating this ancient art of presence and creating these spaces for our clients to be truly seen and heard?
Okay. Yes. It all begins in you. You have to be at peace. You have to be present with yourself before you can hold that space for others. Because if you are struggling to sit with the discomfort of another person, you are no longer the safest space for that person because you yourself are dysregulated in the presence of their discomfort. So you
Hmm.
have to be able to hold yourself in peace with whatever is before you and be the model of how that person can do that for themselves. It
Hmm.
all starts inside of you.
That's amazing. Okay, Jay, so we're going to enter our speed round. These are some fun questions as well as some really meaningful questions that just allow us to get a little bit of an idea of who you are as a coach. So if any of our audience wants to reach out to you, feels really aligned to you, this allows them to do that. So I'm going to ask you 10 questions. You can answer it how long or how short you want.
Okay.
Totally up to you. So your first question: what meal do you always go back for seconds?
On what meal? That's a good question. The meal that actually makes my body feel satisfied and comforted.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
what that meal is in each moment, it's completely up to that moment. But if this meal satisfied me, I want a
Hmm.
little more.
Hmm. I love it. So good. Okay. Who was your favorite teacher growing up and why?
Oh my God, Mr. Leedkey. Oh, I still hope anyone who's had him like is able to watch this so we can celebrate him together. He was a teacher who actually inspired me to be the type of teacher I was. I had him for 2 years in grades 6 and 7. He took us out every Friday into nature, so that we could train to hike the West Coast Trail. He taught us how to live and be in the land. He taught us how to be present in the face of fear. Really quickly, I'll share a story about that. We would hike and we would walk a lot on Fridays, and we would go to a beach where he would teach us how to start fires and how to set up our tents and how to find different like plants
Hmm.
for food or whatever. On this one particular day, we were being buttheads. I mean, we were 11 or 12 years old, right? And he had actually orchestrated this experience where we thought we were like on private property and we were being chased by the owner, and we all lost our minds. We were chickens with our heads cut off. Like we had no idea what we were doing. And we ran through a field of stinging nettle, like we were covered in welts. And he let this happen because he knew that we were safe. He knew that nothing
Hmm.
bad was going to happen to us. And then what he did is he gathered us into a circle of trees and had us hold hands and chant, "Where the hell are we? Where the hell are we?" Until
Hmm.
we calmed down. And we looked around and we said, "Oh, we know exactly where we are." And he used that as an opportunity to teach us about what happens when we're dysregulated and we're locked into our fear and our stories, right?
Hmm.
You have to come back to your body, because if we're out in nature and we get lost, right? How are you going to calm the fear of being lost so you can find your way home?
Hmm. So
Yeah.
good. That's so fun. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
His name was Mr. Lee.
Mr. Leadkey.
Mr. Lead Key. So
Yeah.
amazing. Well, Mr. Lead Key, you're amazing. And every student who had you was probably also impacted as powerfully as well.
Oh my God, I
Okay.
love that I just have to give him a shout out. Yeah.
Yeah. What was
Yeah.
the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?
Oh my God, so many things. The most embarrassing thing, to be honest with you, I because I had such low self-worth for so long, I think that a lot of my life was just embarrassing to me. I was
Hmm.
always really like critical of myself in the moment and really judging, like I don't know if I did that okay, and I would get these like really intense shame spirals. And I
Hmm.
spent a lot of my life embarrassed as a result of my low self-worth. And working on that and coming out the other side of it where I actually value who I am, I'm not embarrassed by things anymore. Now I'm just like, when I feel that kind of embarrassment rise up, I'm now like, oh, I have something to learn here.
Hmm. So good. I love that. And leveraging that embarrassment
Yeah.
for, hey, what can I learn here? That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's so
Yeah.
good. Okay, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Yes, peace. Don't expect anything.
Hmm.
Don't expect.
Hmm.
Expectation is going to set you up for disappointment, because you
Hmm.
cannot, expectation is a future um, motivation, and you can't determine the future. So if you live your
Hmm.
life expecting a certain outcome and you arrive at that future moment and that outcome has, or that expectation is not part of your reality, you go into a place of darkness. So don't
Hmm.
expect anything.
It comes back to receiving what the moment has for you.
Absolutely.
So good. Okay,
Mhm.
what song or show are you binge listening to or watching to right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't watch a lot of TV right now, but I did just finish watching. Okay, so Stranger Things. and Wednesday. I really love those two. I love darker fiction. And if I had to, though, like step a little bit outside that question, my favorite movie of all time is The Fountain by Darren Aronofsky.
The Fountain. I'm going to add it to my list.
Good.
Okay. How did you find and land your most recent client?
That's a really good question. They found me.
Mm-hmm.
It was somebody that has been following me for quite some time. And she just knew that it was time for us to work together. And she reached out to me and she said, it's time. And I said, I'm so excited to be here for you. And I honestly find that those are my best clients, are the ones that just know that they're ready to work with me and they say, I'm ready. It's not necessarily about me searching for them. It's about being the space for them to come to.
So good. Okay, what do you think happens when we die?
I don't want to know. I want the mystery.
I love it.
Yeah.
What is the most used app on your phone?
Probably right now it's Instagram. I'm just really focused on that, like, really communicating well to an audience. And so I'm very intentional about how I'm using that particular app, just for the focus of communicating.
That's amazing. Who are 3 people in your audience you want to shout out?
Oh, 3 people. Good question. I'm so bad with names, Shawn. Can I look at my phone before I answer that question?
Do it.
I can't remember the name. Okay. My students used to laugh about this. I would remember every single story they told me, but I wouldn't remember their name. I don't understand that. So I'm going to go to my search feature. So I have been really appreciating I Am Ruby on Instagram. I Am Rick William. I've been really appreciating his content. And then who else is in my search that I've been appreciating lately? Oh, MDM Motivator. He goes around and he just like finds people to bless. And honestly, like getting his like little clip in my feed first thing in the morning sets my day up for like how I can show up and serve.
That's amazing.
The world. Yeah.
I love it. That's beautiful. Okay, and the last question is, where can folks connect more with you?
Instagram. Yeah, right now I'm just really focused there. So it's at Jaymi, Jaymi .Jai. Yeah.
At the @ JAYMI .JAI.
That's it. Yeah.
That's amazing. We'll have that in the show notes for you. Jaymi, thank you so much for being on our show. This was so fun. I learned so much. I'm going to have to listen to this like 5 more times. So good. Everybody, let's go ahead and give Jaymi a huge round of applause. Thank you so much, Jay.
Thank you, Shawn. This was awesome.
Well, that's our show. I'm ShawnQ, your high-ticket sales coach, as well as your executive abundance coach. A big thank you to our guest, Jaymi Jai, as well as our sponsor, the One Client Away Challenge, a free 5-day challenge designed to help you fill your group coaching programs with ease and not sleaze. Remember to sign up for the free sales training at clientchallenge.com. And finally, a special thank you to you for spending some time with us today. We hope you learned something useful today that will help you coach more powerfully, grow in your abundance, and change the world. I'm ShawnQ, and we'll see you next time.